Hello, listeners. It's Jennifer James of the Common Mystics podcast. If you're wondering how to tap into your own Spideys, I've got great news for you. The first ever Common Mystics online class will be offered virtually in February 2024. The Psychic Clairs is a 5-part workshop designed to awaken your psychic senses and provide you with the feedback and tools you need to take them to the next level. For more information on the Common Mystics Psychic Clairs workshop, email us at commonmystics@gmail.com and include the subject line Psychic Workshop. And now, on to the show. On this episode of Common Mystics, we discuss one of the worst flood-related disasters in the history of Pennsylvania. I'm Jennifer James.
I'm Jill Stanley.
We're psychics.
We're sisters.
We are Common Mystics. We find extraordinary stories in ordinary places, and today's story takes us to oil country, Pennsylvania.
That's right, Jen. I think this is actually like the second worst
disaster story
of our yeah, in the history of our country. But that's okay. Leave it.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about like it's the worst disaster we've ever discussed.
Well, it certainly gives me nightmares. Like this seriously hits home as far as how I am triggered and like what my fears are. This is seriously one of my fears.
Okay. Well,
just in general.
Let's get into it.
Okay. Tell me everything. Where were we?
We were headed to New England.
We were. And we were east on 80 in this fine country of ours.
We were at the funniest thing. This never happens to us. We almost ran out of gas.
Literally.
How did you let that happen? Like
I usually, if you know, because I'm crazy, I have like the safety thing where like I have to get more gas when we're on a road trip around a quarter tank. And so like if we stopped to go to the washroom, but we never stopped.
Yeah.
We just kept driving. We were so excited to be going to New England. We were just running down and literally I looked down and it was like, you're not going to make it much farther, girls. It was so bizarre.
That light came on. That's the scariest thing. Like my anxiety goes through the roof when the light goes on.
It wasn't just that the light came on. The light had been on. Like now Jill, it was like we're on
I'm glad you didn't tell me that because I probably would have pissed my pants in the passenger side.
That's fair.
Anyway.
That's fair.
Yeah. So we were around a town called Emlenton, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And when we first saw Emlenton, we saw it from a distance, like as if we were on, I believe we were actually elevated and we saw the town below to our left. And we're like, well, that's our town. We got to get off there. I'm sure they have gas.
Yeah, we knew it. We knew we had to go there. And it looked so quaint and inviting. Like
super cute.
Like, you know, those miniature Christmas village scenes with all the little houses that have the little light bulbs on the inside. That's how it looked to me. It was super inviting. It looked super quaint. And I just knew that's where we're going.
That's where we're going. And let's hope they have a gas station as soon as we roll into town.
They did.
Okay. So we drive into town and I am totally feeling oil barren. And again, it's weird. I know gas was on my mind because we needed gas, but it feels like we were in the right place for gas. Literally, right?
Yeah, for real. And I was picking up on not only gas, but also lumber. Like the place felt so rich in resources. I was like, and there's gas and there's lumber. You know what I mean? I just had that super rich feeling of resources on my mind.
So as we were pulling, we got gas and we were kind of driving around this little town. And as we were driving around, I, in my mind's eye, was seeing a scene from a PBS documentary about a dam bursting and a town flooding downstream. And I didn't know why it was in my mind's eye, but that's what I was picking up on. You?
Well, I had the knowledge of many deaths. Particularly many deaths of children. Children's deaths was in the forefront of my mind. Yeah. It was
never
super
good.
Sad.
Super sad. So we stopped the car on Main Street and we're like, we need to get out and we need to look around. We need to explore this town. But what was interesting is that we were both feeling like we needed to go at a higher elevation.
Higher ground.
We needed to get up. Like we were looking at buildings that were literally up on elevated ground.
Yes.
We're like, we need to go up.
We need to go up. Exactly. And we were trying to get up. But it was the craziest thing. We could not do it. It was like every street we turned on was a dead end.
It didn't even look like streets. We're like, how is this? Like, what?
Yeah.
It looked like
What's
a
the
bunch of
plan
driveways. Yeah. Exactly. Didn't make any sense. Every street was a dead end.
Right.
Every street looked like it was a driveway.
It was really,
that we should not be in.
It was so frustrating because we knew we had to get up, but we couldn't. And every time we turned, it was another dead end. It was a super crazy experience. And we finally gave up. It felt so trapped. Yeah. So we were definitely pulled uphill, but also north. We got the feeling that going north was really important. We had to get north and uphill. Mm-hmm.
And there was this sense around the town. As we were driving, I felt two dual energies.
Okay.
One, it felt very sad, right? The sense of sadness, but also a sense of pride.
Yes.
Like the ghosts around there were so super proud of this area and who they are and where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like this duality I was feeling.
I was really surprised that I was picking up on an explosion that had to do with gases, like a gaseous sort of explosion. And then there was a name that both of us picked up on at the same time.
That's right. We were driving and I saw a sign that said something Crawford. And I'm like, you need to write that down. Crawford seems significant. And what'd you say?
I said, I was just writing that down. Like as I was writing CRA, you're like, write down Crawford. Crawford is important. And I'm like, dude, get out of my head.
So we decide, because we can't get anywhere in the car at this point, because we were just hitting dead end after dead end after dead end. We get out and we do a little bit of walking around the main street of the area. Yep. Describe to our lovely audiences what we're feeling as we're checking out the vibes of the town.
I think you were picking up on the fact that the river seemed important and the feeling of flooding, but I think you were almost hesitant to even bring that up because, of course, rivers flood. Do you know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
That seems cheap.
Exactly, because we're right there.
Right.
And of course, you're like, because the river is directly like parallel with Main Street. And we're like, well, of course, heavy rains, something's going to flood, right?
Right.
So that did feel super cheap. But as we were walking around town, another breadcrumb were these oil heritage signs, which was like, oh my God, we are super duper psychic right now.
Yeah, for real. And then I had this crazy drive. I had to find the cemetery. I had to find specifically bodies in the cemetery, people who died in the cemetery. And I can't explain it other than I was driven. We have to find the cemetery and find people who died in the disaster.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and again, usually our pursuit in finding a cemetery in an area is because we want more information. But you were on like, we need to find the bodies.
Yes.
You were looking for
I was
straight
looking
up bodies?
for bodies who died in a disaster, specifically that explosion that I was feeling.
Very interesting. And so we did find 2 different cemeteries, and guess what?
Dead ends again. It was so crazy.
It was so weird. It's like every place you felt like there was no getting out.
Right.
Like you drive into a cemetery and the cemetery is adjacent to another cemetery, but it looks like one huge cemetery. It doesn't look like 2 different cemeteries.
Right, but it's not.
But it's not. You're cut off. Again, dead end after dead end. It's the most frustrating thing.
Right. And so we didn't really find anything in the cemeteries, and it was really, really frustrating. But there was one name that stood out to us both.
Grief.
Yeah, the name Grief on a headstone. And that really kind of pointed us in the direction of there was a lot of grief surrounding the location of bodies somehow that had to do with this whole situation that happened near this area.
And as always, we are confused, writing notes, and we were still drawn north, but we needed to get our tails into a different area of Pennsylvania so we can spend the night.
Right.
Because we had a long day of driving ahead
Right.
the next day.
So we didn't
too.
have
So
time to poke around in, north central Pennsylvania. So we had to get to our hotel room, but that's definitely where we wanted to go.
Right. And I would say this, we already waste a lot of times on a lot of dead ends, right?
Yeah.
I know we're saying it very quickly here, but we spent like an afternoon going through a town full of dead ends
Right.
that it was like, I don't have time to be fucking around here anymore. Like, we need to get going.
Yeah, 100%. Well said. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about our Emlenton, Pennsylvania. Give me a little bit of the history.
I will. Emlenton is a borough in Clarion and Venango counties in northwestern Pennsylvania. And it is known as the gateway to oil country.
Who knew?
Not us. It's called the gateway to oil country due to its significant historical connection to the oil industry. Personally, I had no idea that Pennsylvania had such a rich history in oil.
Zero clue.
But Emlenton is strategically located at the southern tip of what's known as Pennsylvania's oil region. And Jill, it's the site of the world's first commercial oil well.
Wow.
In the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Now,
can I just say something?
Sure.
I wonder if this experiment with like driving around using the spirits to find us a verifiable story unknown to us.
Previously unknown to us. Oh, yeah. We forgot to tell people our intention.
Well, my whole thing is,
I'm
like,
glad you
if
brought
we
that
weren't, if we weren't so ignorant, I don't know if this would work. Because we're always fighting things we didn't know about, right?
Yeah, good thing we're idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're like, well, I did not know. I did not notice. Like, of course, if we had any kind of education, sorry, Mom, this may not work.
This wouldn't work. Yeah. Oh, my
so
God.
thank
good
God
point.
we're idiots. Okay.
All right. So there
It makes for good listening.
there was an oil boom during the 19th century. And Emlenton, Pennsylvania, played a crucial role as a transit hub for the burgeoning oil industry there.
Again, who knew?
Not us.
Who knew these things? Definitely not us.
Oil was extracted from the rich fields in the north. And this oil was transported through Emlenton to refineries in the south and earning it the nickname, the Gateway to Oil Country. Mm-hmm.
Got it.
In fact, the region is so important in the history of oil in the United States that in 2004, Congress celebrated the region's pioneering role in America's oil boom, designating a 708 square mile area stretching from Emlenton in the south to Titusville, Pennsylvania in the north as Oil Region National Heritage Area.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So literally, we were at the very edge of oil country.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about oil country, how it bore a town called Titusville. Like, tell me about Titusville.
Well, Titusville plays a really important part in the birth of this entire area.
I don't believe you.
In 1796, a man named Jonathan Titus settled along the banks of what is now Oil Creek. Titus named the village Edinburgh, but as it grew, the settlers just called it Titusville. I loved it, right? I love that about him. He's like, yeah, don't name it after me. And they're like, fuck that, we're calling it Titusville.
But it's your ville.
I know. The village was incorporated in 1849, and it was a slow-growing community until petroleum was discovered. Now, I say discovered by in terms of the white settlers, but
again, white people, we ain't the smartest.
No, as we prove again and again. But oil was known to exist there. See, it was naturally just seeping from the ground. But
wow.
But there was no practical way to get it and use it. You know what I mean? You knew it was there. It was just kind of oozing out. But
so the natives and the indigenous people and animals kind of steer clear of the black gold coming out of the ground.
Well, actually, Native Americans in Pennsylvania, particularly the Iroquois and the Seneca tribes, were known to use the petroleum for different medicinal purposes long before the birth of the industrial petroleum industry. See,
What do you mean medicinal purposes?
well, the Iroquois in particular would use it as a salve. So they would like apply it to their skin for different reasons, like to soothe and heal minor wounds and burns. Petroleum was also used as a mosquito repellent. Now that I can see.
Hell yes.
That would work.
I can totally see that.
That shit would work. I'm not going to try it, but that shit would work.
I did try it.
Shut up.
Detour.
Shut up.
I swear.
All right, we're writing this
Swear. And I will tell you, Officer Baker was not happy about it.
down. Okay. Detour. So check us out in Detours on our Patreon site because I have to hear about you slathering petroleum over yourself.
No.
Hold
well,
on.
no.
All right.
I was talking about
No.
using-
Let's leave everyone with that image. Check us out at Detours.
If I'm going to slather a substance, it would be Crisco, baby.
I don't even know what
True.
to say. All right. So mosquito repellent, moving on. And there
Because
are
I'm finger looking good.
And there
Yes,
are
I am.
accounts of Native Americans teaching George Washington's troop to use oil to treat frostbite during the harsh winter months.
I did not know that
No,
either.
Me neither.
That's way cool.
Now, so
Way cool.
So the native peoples knew that it was there. The settlers knew that it was there. You could see it seeping up from the ground. But in the late 1850s, the Seneca Oil Company was interested in trying to figure out if they could access it in a way that they could capitalize on the value of that natural resource. And they sent a man named Colonel Edwin L. Drake to start drilling on a piece of leased land just south of Titusville near what is now Oil Creek State Park.
Okay, cool.
It was here in Crawford County, Pennsylvania, during the hot summer month of August 1859, that Edwin Drake made an astounding discovery on the eastern bank of Oil Creek at the site of a natural oil seep. Drake struck oil at the surprisingly shallow depth of just 89 feet. Now, Jill, I looked this up, and most oil wells are typically between 5,000 to 10,000 feet deep. So the fact that Drake struck oil at just 89 feet is totally notable.
Because it would be cheaper to get at the oil and to extract it.
Drake's oil well heralded America's inaugural oil boom. And this initial reliable crude petroleum supply was the first commercially successful well established in the entire world.
Wow.
Yes.
So what happened to Titusville?
Well, this led to a dramatic and sudden increase in the application of oil in different industries, ranging from machine lubrication, waterproofing, providing heat and light, to serving as an essential raw material for various applications. And of course, with this boom, thousands of people flocked to the industrial area, and it was known as the Pennsylvania Oil Rush. And that
That's
makes
crazy.
sense. That makes sense because you would need people, you would need workers to build the infrastructure for this new industry, right?
Yes.
You would need drivers to transport product. You would need pipelines to be laid to move the flowing oil. You would need rails to be put down to create railroads. And the railroads were established and grew, which just brought more and more people to the area. Now, between 1860 and 1870, the population of Titusville ballooned from 438 people to over 8,600. That's a growth of over 1,800%.
I don't even know what I would do with myself. That just seems like in the 1800s, like it would be like, wow, we're just way too close. You guys need to back up, right? I moved to the country for a reason, and now here you all are. Just chill.
Well, that's the thing. People weren't moving to the country at that time. They were moving to the industry. They were moving to the jobs. They were moving to a settlement of people.
Wow.
It was so notable that in 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant visited Titusville to witness the growth of the region.
Wow.
Yeah, for real.
What kind of people were coming to the area based on the type of industries that were booming in Titusville?
A lot of workers were coming to the area to settle with their families. And one example was a man named Jacob Bingenheimer.
His name is my name too.
I don't
Sorry.
think that's correct.
You don't think it's-
No.
Whenever you go out, the people always shout.
Really?
Do you know that song?
John Jacob Jingleheimer Smith, fa la 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 la. Yeah, I know that song, but we're talking about Jacob Bingenheimer, and I feel like you're a little disrespectful right now.
Really? I think it goes in the song.
He was a German immigrant born in 1850, and he embarked on a journey with his family to the U.S. in 1854. He settled in Titusville, pursuing a career as a boiler maker. And a boiler maker, go ahead.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, Boilermaker? What are we doing?
A boilermaker constructs boilers or creates boilers. Making boilers was a vital component in the 19th century because steam engines powered various machines and trains and ships. So in order to have a working steam engine, you would need a boiler to heat up the water to create the steam. And so people like boilermakers who could make these boilers were in demand in the area in the 19th century during this boom.
Not only were they vital to creating the boilers, but they were also vital to maintain the boilers and other kind of metals.
Right, exactly.
Pretty cool. So tell me, Jacob, he arrives Titusville. It's 1870. He's only 19 years old.
And he excelled at his profession as a boilermaker. He found love and he married a woman named Susan. And in 1873, they welcomed their first child, Jacob Jr. Eventually, the Bingenheimer family settled along the banks of Oil Creek in Titusville.
So as their family was growing, they were moving around Titusville along the banks of Oil Creek. So over a period of years, they were at one location, they moved to another, about a half mile away from where they originated from, but they just kept moving around as their family grew. And their family, by the way, did grow.
To how many children?
8. They had 8
children. And they finally settled on the banks of Oil Creek in Titusville, the couple and their 8 children together.
He's a great example of the type of workers and families and men who would come to oil country to build their lives.
For sure.
He was one of many.
He was. In addition to settlers like Jacob Bingenheimer, entrepreneurs were also flocking to oil country in the late 1800s.
Like who? Give me an example.
Okay, why don't I give you an example? One of the notable ones was a man named George Crawford.
Who he?
George Washington Crawford was born in 1861. He was a prominent American businessman in the late 19th and early 20th century. And he was a founder and executive of Columbia Gas and Electric.
Okay, so what was his whole claim to fame?
Well, his landmark discovery was in 1881 when he struck natural gas while drilling a well on his property in Emlenton.
Stop it.
And Crawford's well was not the first to discover natural gas, but it was one of the most productive wells of the time. It spewed an enormous column of gas. Sounds like someone I know. Indicating the
Detour Jennifer in the Cadillac. That's all I'm going to say.
Rude.
What? Really? What did you just say?
I said something.
Yeah. Touche, me friend.
All right. The well spewed an enormous column of gas, indicating the vast gas reserves present there. And this marked the start of the natural gas boom in Pennsylvania. Holy cow, how many booms can Pennsylvania have?
Well, let's recap it because we went through a lot. So let's put a button on it.
All right, do it.
No, you do it. The economical landscape of oil country. Tell me everything. Recap. Put a button.
The economic landscape of oil country, which included the counties of Crawford, Venango, Clarion, in Pennsylvania, experienced significant transformation with this boom of oil and natural gas, and industrialization was spurred on by the abundance of the natural resources in the area, including lumber and riverways. And the industrial surge left an indelible mark on the region, shaping its economic identity and fostering growth in secondary industries such as manufacturing, transportation, and services.
Okay, Jennifer, the stage is set.
Tell me everything.
No one could have imagined that a series of seemingly unrelated events in these communities would create a real ticking time bomb for Pennsylvania and its oil country.
No, we were so upbeat up till now.
Okay, tell me.
Okay. Remember how Titusville is located north of Emlenton, where we were?
Do I? Yes, I do remember that.
Right. About 15 miles north of Titusville, Pennsylvania, in a borough called Spartansburg, there was a situation developing that would prove to be a trigger, setting off a cataclysmic series of events.
Oh, no.
2022, just 2 years ago, according to a local news outlet called Go Erie, there was a place called Platt's Mill on Main Street. And as of 2022, it was the longest operating business in Spartansville, Pennsylvania.
That's way cool.
Now, the owner and president of Platt's Mill at 110 Mill Street in Spartansburg was selling his mill to retire. And that mill had been run by his family for 4 generations.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the mill.
Platt's Mill was the original grist mill site begun by the Atkins brothers in the 1830s.
What's a grist mill?
Good question. A grist mill is a facility where grain is ground into flour.
Okay.
And because of the mill located in that area in the 1830s, there was a dam that was constructed on Oil Creek in 1855. And this dam supported not only that mill, but other mills in the area as well. Like, for example, the same Atkins family who owned Platt's Mill also owned a sawmill on Oil Creek. A sawmill, of course, is known as a lumber mill or a facility where logs are cut into lumber. So you have all kinds of different manufacturing locations or mills on Oil Creek that are supported by the dam.
Got it. So what's the importance of a dam? Like, why do they need a dam to run these things?
Oh my gosh, I totally looked into this. In the 1890s, dams were super important for powering mills, especially in areas where other power sources weren't readily available.
There is no one on earth more excited to have researched dams than you.
Do you know how a dam works? Like, seriously, do you know how a dam works?
Yes,
you
I do.
All right,
kind
so
of.
talk to me. Like, how does a dam work?
Okay.
All right, explain.
So there's water storage.
What do you mean?
So dams serve as a very large storage system. They hold back water in a reserve.
Yes.
Creating a higher water than would have been there
Right.
if we didn't dam it.
Right. So a dam is essentially a wall or a barrier. And on one side, that's where the reservoir is. And that water gets to build up and build up and build up. And so there's a higher water level on one side of the dam than the other. Now, why is this important? It's important because that stored water is released in a controlled way to flow down a channel or a pipe, gaining speed and energy due to gravity. And at the bottom, that's where the rushing water hits the blades of the water wheel or the turbine, causing it to spin. And that then creates the mechanical power to run the machinery inside the mill, right? Via a system of gears and shafts. Converting,
You're very excited.
I am
about this.
so excited. Converting the water's kinetic energy into the mechanical energy to do the work inside the mill, to turn the machinery parts, to be able to grind the flour and, saw logs in a lumber mill. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's so important because in times where the water is running quickly, mills could rely on the energy from the rivers to move the mechanisms in their mill and things would be fine. But in times of drought, it would dry up and everything would stop. And so because they were able to create dams, they could control that water supply. They could keep a reservoir to make sure that the water kept moving. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But as helpful as dams are, we should talk about some of the drawbacks to having a dam.
Well, okay, let's
or
talk
damming.
about. So what do you imagine would be one of the drawbacks, just in general, looking away from the outline for a second? Like you have a dam, you built a wall to control the water so it can fuel your manufacturing center. So what do you see as some of the drawbacks?
Well, I'm thinking specifically of wildlife. So now we're controlling water. So the natural flow of a river is being changed or diverted. So the wildlife would have to change their access to where they're getting the water.
Okay, interesting. And I'm thinking about settlements downriver that are maybe depending on water to like come down, and maybe, by creating a dam, you're changing a different community's access to water. Like that kind of sucks.
Yeah, 100%.
Hang in there, guys. We'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited to unveil the first book in our series entitled Common Mystics Present Ghost on the Road Volume 1, Murders and Mysterious Deaths.
It's everything you love about common mystics and more.
It's a retelling of 10 of our favorite stories from our pod with exciting extras.
Extras like souvenirs, what we took away from the experience, and what to know if you decide to travel in our footsteps.
Pre-order the Kindle edition now. All other formats of the book will be available for purchase at Amazon.com on July 1st, 2023.
Thanks, guys. Now back to the show.
The other thing that comes to mind is the amount of physical pressure that is created on the dam as it holds back that water.
So, see, this again triggering my fear. Like I already have a lump in my throat.
I can
It's
see
so
your
scary to
anxiety
me.
rising.
It really does. It really makes me anxious. Like, yeah,
It's
okay, go on.
it's like pulling back the rubber band on a slingshot. It's like you're building that physical pressure, and just one flick of your fingers releases it. Okay.
And so now let me take you to the spring of 1892 as you're having that wonderful metaphor of the rubber band intention. Tell me what happens.
In the spring
1892.
In the spring of 1892, heavy rain fell over northwest Pennsylvania, culminating in massive flooding.
And I just want to say that a recent National Weather Service article was written about this event in 1892. This rainfall was like an event. It was like you felt like Noah was building an ark somewhere because it rained all of May, and that shit just kept going down into the summer months. So continue.
On the evening of June 4th, 1892, the flooding of Oil Creek was so extreme that it flooded the areas all along its banks, including the towns of Titusville and Oil City. Let me just say, let's just stop there. That's freaking bad enough. Like, there's nothing more anxiety producing than sitting in my house during a really bad rainstorm and hearing my sump pump work and watching the water around my house get higher and higher, because there's literally nothing you can do. Literally nothing you can do except for pray.
I swear the city of Kalamazoo, like every 2 years, is literally underneath like feet of water.
God.
Like, and that is like the saturated ground just can't hold any more water, that it just rises up and creates pools around the city.
All right.
Literally.
So can we
like
just
every
stop
2
right
years.
here? If we stopped right here, this would be bad enough. This would be like
Yeah, it
story.
sucks.
Yeah, this sucks.
This is you're taking shit out of your basement. You're wearing your galoshes.
Yeah.
We're in the 21st century and it still sucks.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Now go to the 19th century and let's see how badly.
All right. Back to 1892 in Titusville. The Titusville Water and Gas Works was flooded with a significant amount of water. Okay. By midnight.
Okay, so it already sucks. So if you're in Titusville in the spring of 1892, shit sucks.
Right. And not only are homes flooding, but manufacturing centers are flooding. The gas
So
works.
industries. Yeah.
The oil works. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
By midnight, the Spartansburg Dam had burst. The dam burst.
Okay.
So that's letting go of that rubber band on your slingshot.
Mm-hmm.
It sent a massive wave of water down Oil Creek, completely destroying several oil refineries.
And this is the thing. Back in the 19th century, they didn't really have a healthy respect and understanding to these chemicals and the power behind them, right? So they were kind of all loosey-goosey with the regulations of how they were storing these
What
things.
regulations?
Exactly.
As these oil refineries were destroyed, oil, pure oil, as well as chemicals like benzene and naphtha, were spewed into the floodwaters. Do you know anything about benzene and naphtha?
I think I might have done it when I was in my teen years.
Jill. Benzene and naphtha.
I mean, I tried it once, I'm sure. Just kidding.
Benzene and naphtha are highly flammable liquids that can form explosive mixtures in the air.
No.
Yes.
Oh, no.
These industrial chemicals are harmful if just ingested or inhaled and cause skin irritation. And benzene in particular is a known human carcinogen. So
Jesus.
that alone, now you have flood waters with these caustic, harmful chemicals. And together with the oil, they're forming a dangerous cocktail on the surface of the flood waters.
Fuck. Now, okay, so I'm just gonna paint this picture. So I'm living in Titusville. The water has risen to a point where it is lifting containers of what was carcinogens and gases,
The oil.
and now and it's all over now this flooded river. And I do not know that miles north of me, a dam in Spartansburg has been compromised.
And it's midnight.
And it's midnight.
So you're probably asleep. And so are your children.
I'm probably not sleeping that night. I'm telling you right now, there is not enough alcohol or Xanax in the 19th century to put my ass to sleep.
And there is a wave of water and dangerous chemicals heading your way.
Uh-oh.
And here's what happened. As the morning progressed, the water began to catch fire. And there were massive explosions. Around 4 a.m., the tanks from the International Oil Works on Monroe Street in Titusville burst into flames, setting fire to buildings along the surrounding streets. And as the flooding worsened, families and business owners were forced to evacuate their homes. By 8 a.m., the floodwaters were 8 feet tall. As the wall of water spread through town, rescue boats were sent in by train to help evacuate survivors. Around 10 a.m., there were 5,000 spectators lining the banks of Oil Creek watching the disaster unfold. The combination of the naphtha and other chemicals rose into the air, and the entire scene was covered in an eerie yellow fog. There were flashes and bangs from upriver, and suddenly there was fire everywhere. Flames stretched to 500 feet in the air, with smoke billowing from it even higher. Buildings exploded as the volatile gas and oil ignited. 75 homes were burned, and Titusville itself was completely leveled. I'm going to say something about newspaper reporting in the late 1800s, and I will tell you that it is often very flowery, very dramatic. Because newspapers were a form of entertainment as well as news.
Yeah, very hyperbolic.
And they had so few entertainment, venues, outlets at the time. But reading the newspaper articles that came out in June of 1892 after this disaster, they get it right. The drama, the language describes this event like the apocalypse. And
literally?
And it's true. For once, they get it right. Like, it's horrific.
Literally, you're describing hell to me. Mm-hmm. Like, there is molten, like, fire and brimstone, and there's a lake of fire and a river of fire coming at me. And when you described 5,000 people on the banks, those are 5,000 people that are watching their town. Yeah. It's not like 5,000 people came there to watch it. No, they managed to get to the banks of the river as opposed to like in the swirl of fire and shit going around. Yeah. And they're watching their lives burn up. But also, I want to couple that, which they don't know what's coming next. They don't know if they're at a safe distance. Yeah. They don't know. They're hearing explosions and they don't know if more water's coming.
Right.
They don't know if the fire is going to get them. They don't know if they're far enough away. And that in itself gives me an anxiety attack.
Jill, did you raise your hand on Zoom?
No.
As you were
What are talking
talking, your hand raised. You know the little icon? I'm getting the chills right now.
That's creepy as fuck because I'm not like,
You're
you're
not-
in my little box.
You guys,
And-
we are recording on Zoom right now, and Jill is talking about the feelings of the spirits. And as she's talking with her hands, I can see her hands, that little hand raised icon came up. So I don't know who just.
Not even touching my keyboard. Ah!
Okay, so that's validation from fucking spirit right now.
That they were scared as fuck. They were like, yes,
Like,
Jill.
yes.
Yes, Jill, you got it. You knew.
Preach.
It's like you were there.
Oh my
Yeah, no, for
God.
real. Think about that though.
All right.
Like 5,000 people are like, fuck, what's happening
No
next?
shit.
Like you don't know what's happening next. And the only thing that I can think about if I put my Jilly ego self into that is like the night of 9/11.
Yeah.
Like
Not
you
knowing
don't know what's
coming.
yeah, you're like, fuck, anything can happen right now.
Oh my God. But not even, because 9/11, you weren't watching your specific house, your community, like being
Right, but
flooded
if you
and
were a
frickin'
New
burned.
Yorker-
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, if you were a New Yorker
Yeah.
on like the
a
Hudson
good
watching
Yeah.
Ugh.
The entire business district of Titusville, Pennsylvania was damaged and destroyed by the floods and subsequent fires. Spartansburg, upstream of Titusville, saw significant damage but did not sustain the effects of the fires that happened in Titusville. The burning creek advanced southward into the next community, Oil City, and by 6 a.m., it struck. Alarms were raised all over town, with the creek cresting at about 9 or 10 a.m. To make matters even worse, several tankers holding benzene were located along the banks of the creek, and the whole upper end of Oil City on both sides of Oil Creek was inundated. The benzene became ignited and burned most of the second and third wards, with 200 to 300 buildings. At the end of the day, rescue committees had been formed to help the homeless, and rescue efforts continued to search for survivors. The death toll stood at 90, with many, many more missing. And at midnight, rescue workers found and saved 16 adults and 5 children stranded behind Oil City Barrel Works. The final death toll was 132. The property damage exceeded $1,500,000. This was a pretty significant event.
Can you imagine being at home and seeing in a distance a burning creek headed your way?
Oh my God. No, it's biblical.
Literally.
It's biblical. And it's known as the worst flood-related disaster in Pennsylvania other than the catastrophic Johnstown flood of 1889, a few years earlier. Both disasters stemmed from a dam bursting.
Let's go to our voiceless. I feel like there's so many.
Yeah. Like 132.
but- Yeah. And that's not to mention the survivors
Yeah.
that are maimed or have like lived afterwards with the cancer carcinogens in their body from inhaling that all night.
Or got sick
We're-
or burned and the survivors who lost family members.
Yes. Tell me about one of those survivors.
We met him, Jacob Bingenheimer. At the time of the 1892 flood, Jacob and his wife Susan and their children, like I mentioned, were living in Titusville. Their youngest child had just been born in May of that year, their 8th child, a baby boy. And of course, the tragedy of the devastating flood and fire when it ravaged the area, Susan and all 8 of their children perished in the ruins of their home. On June 8th, 1892, at 10 a.m., Jacob bid his entire family farewell. They were laid to rest at Dutch Hill Cemetery. As you can imagine, it was a somber procession, as all 9 of the coffins were carefully maneuvered through the remnants of town, carried by hand across the railroad bridge to their final resting place. But the ordeal was compounded by the aftermath of fire and explosions, which left many bodies unrecognizable due to severe burns. But there was controversy, even surrounding the death and burial of the children. Within days...
It gets worse.
Oh, I know.
It gets so much worse for Jacob. Once you're like, oh my God, this poor man.
You're right. Let's
and
put
here
it to
we
rest.
are.
Let's put this whole thing to rest. No, within days,
Nope.
there were suspicions that 3 of the members of a different family, the Whalen family, were mistakenly buried instead of Bingenmeyer's children. Do you believe that?
No. So they have to
To alleviate...
dig up. They have to dig up. Poor Jacob. He has to stand aside and watch his family be dug up
Oh my God.
for further examination.
Exactly. So they were exhumed. The Bingenheimer children's remains were exhumed, and authorities meticulously examined the remains, employing additional measures to ensure the accurate identification, and the children were once again laid to rest, bringing a semblance of peace, finally, to Jacob's shattered heart.
Oh, Jacob, I am so sorry.
Okay, Jill.
So, Jen,
Jill.
fuck, right?
Yeah.
Just fuck. Oh my God.
Your hand is still raised, by the way. Doesn't it
Well,
go down automatically?
I'm not touching it. So I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, why is this story relevant today?
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you think the Bingenheimers knew about the Spartanburg Dam upriver and the risks of living downstream on Oil Creek? Do you think they knew that they were in danger, potentially?
I do not. Do you?
I don't.
I don't.
I don't think anybody thought about it at the time.
I don't even think.
Like, do you know if you live downstream from a dam? Like, do you know if
Well,
your home is in danger from a dam bursting?
Even if I did know, which again, spoiler alert, I did the research. Now I know. Now I fucking know. But back then, even if I did know the existence of the Spartanburg Dam and like, oh, this maybe things don't work out and it just spills over, I would not be able to predict the fiery hell that was created because of that.
100%.
Like, there's no way. So, no, I do not think that they knew. If they did know, I don't think they could imagine the devastation and destruction. But today, guys, we have resources.
Ooh. Like?
Yes. So, let me tell you.
me.
So, Jennifer,
Yes.
do you know if you live downstream from a dam today?
I don't know if I live downstream from a dam.
Girl. Okay. So living near a dam today, you should have the understanding of exactly where you are near that dam and what the potential dangers are.
Okay.
And you can find that information out from FEMA.gov.
Oh.
Yes. FEMA. You know FEMA.
I know FEMA.
I don't know if I know what FEMA stands for, but I do know FEMA. Let me look.
You keep talking. I'll look it up.
Federal Emergency Management Agency. So FEMA is FEMA.gov is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And you can go to FEMA.gov and say, hey, FEMA, am I in a flood zone? Should I be worried about flooding? Now, I think just in general that this kind of information, when you're looking at property or a house, like I feel like this should be a part of it. Like, like how long was the house standing? Like how new was the roof? Oh, you're in a flood zone.
Well, I remember when I was buying my house, like that's a part of it. Like they have to disclose if you're in a flood zone. I think you can like look at realtor.com or some different like websites and they'll tell you if you're in an area that's prone to flooding. That's different from a dam freaking bursting.
No, but okay, so first of all, if you go to FEMA.gov, they will tell you from a safety perspective if you are near flood zones.
Okay.
They will tell you that,
Good.
which is important.
Yeah, you need to know.
Regardless.
You need to know.
Okay. But it also will tell you if that flood zone is affected by a nearby dam.
Okay, good. Okay. That's what we're talking about.
So two things I did when I was Googling for me. I went to the National Registry of Dams.
Oh.
And so That is a website that has been compiled by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
I like it.
So they tell you every inventory of dams, and then you cross-reference that with the FEMA.gov. And it tells you the safety perspectives that dams can present hazards due to the structural failures or flooding, particularly as the weather extremes get greater, right? So as we have more extreme weather, you are at a greater risk of flooding.
Of course.
And of course, the dams are at a greater risk of failing, okay?
Yes.
So regular maintenance and modernizing are important and imperative for especially aging infrastructures like old-ass dams,
Modernizing,
like dams built.
right? So fixing, maintaining the integrity of the dam.
Yeah, that shit's important. That shit's important.
Okay.
So also, because keeping these dams, some of them, as you know, some of them can be taken out. Some of them like stay there for purposes. We already messed up the ecosystem. So they're like, maybe we should just leave this dam. But if you're going to leave a dam, especially old dams, it is really important to modernize and to keep record of what you're doing to it when, right?
Right.
So the dam on Clear Lake in Spartansburg today.
Same dam.
Our dam.
Our dam that
Same
burst.
dam.
Oh, in 1892.
Our dam that burst. Yep.
Okay.
Constructed in 1855.
Jeez.
And it's an earthen dam, which means it's made of like earth like products, like
dirt
woods and stuff. Dirt, wood,
rocks.
Beaver. Think
Oh,
beaver.
Lord.
What a
It was made
beaver
by
is-
beavers?
It was made to the design of beavers.
Wow.
Okay. So anything made from the earth, they created this dam.
Wow.
And the thing is about earthen dams, although they're like, this is like the best made dams, beavers did it right. They faced with erosion.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
When you have that buildup of water, that extreme high pressure, as you so elegantly put it, the sides of the dams start eroding.
Yes.
And it gets worse by wind and rain. And there's spillage. And usually nowadays, like even back then, they had concrete to protect that kind of erosion. But when you have such extreme weathers, there is no stopping it. Once the dam starts to corrode, it's just how long is it going to last before it just spills right over. So again, according to the National Inventory of Dams today, our dam is listed as no longer being used for industry. Okay. It's still there. It is a recreational dam and it is owned now by the municipality, the Spartansburg Borough. Okay. So our dam is there. It's no longer used for industry. It is used just for recreation. That means that the water built up on the other side of the dam, people be swimming in.
Sure.
And they're like boating. Okay. So this dam is supposed to be inspected every 2 years.
All dams,
According
right, are supposed to be inspected every 2 years?
I did not look up
this
all
one.
dams.
Okay.
I'm just looking up this dam.
Okay, got you.
Because there is an insane amount of dams. It looked like America was diseased when I went, and they have all these little purple dots where the dams are. It literally looked like there's dams everywhere. So I would challenge everyone in the United States to go to the National Inventory of Dams and find your house and see how many dams are by you, because you would be shocked.
Okay.
I literally was shocked.
Okay.
So anyway, this dam is supposed to be inspected every 2 years. The website itself wasn't updated since April 9th, 2021. So that's just when the last time
it was updated.
The registry was updated. Okay. So someone has egg on their face. But the last time our dam in Spartansburg that caused all this havoc, the last time it was inspected was in October 2020.
Okay.
At that time,
That's what was entered on the website, which has not been updated since April of 2021.
yes.
Gotcha.
So on this website, it says this dam needs to be updated every 2 years. We haven't been doing it. The last time it was updated is in 2020. That is 4 years ago. Now, the significant hazard clarification posted regarding this dam's specific hazard to the community and those downstream is a significant hazard potential.
What? Why?
So that
What?
means Well, we know why.
I mean,
because
so
Yeah.
why? Okay, so what I would like to know is I would like someone to please update that website. Could you please update that website? Because right now it looks like you guys haven't done shit since October of 2020, but we don't really know that because someone needs to update that website. Like, can we please have that data? Because that's pretty freaking important.
it's really scary that it's like, no, this dam is like hazardous.
Yeah.
Like, we know it's hazardous. You know it's
Right,
hazardous, but
relax.
no one's
Like,
no one's like following up with that.
Right.
Like, that should be like a follow up.
Yeah,
Like,
you'd
let's check
think-
on that hazardous dam.
right. Like, put an alert
Okay.
on your phone. Like, update that shit.
Yeah. So the only comfort that you should know from that website of our hazardous dam that looks like it hasn't been inspected in 4 years is that they do have an emergency action plan in place. An EAP
Okay, what
is
is
what
it?
we call it. So an emergency action plan is written instructions on how the public should organize in the event of a catastrophic disaster.
Cool.
Okay. Per FEMA, an EPA is a formal document that identifies the potential emergency conditions as if a dam were going to burst or corrode,
Mhm.
and the actions people should take to reduce the property damage or loss of life. This is the thing, though. This is the thing. You have to go get that information before a disaster happens. Like, when a disaster is happening, that's really great that they have an EAP on the files at FEMA. But if you don't know what that is, that's not going to do you any good in the event of a disaster, right?
I mean,
so again,
it looks like the plan is to like get out. Like, that's the plan. Like, find your evacuation route and get out.
okay, but like during a fire drill in school, you need to know your evacuation route.
Mhm.
And you need to know like where to meet up, where to tell people that you're safe,
Right.
like that kind of thing.
You're
And-
scaring me, Jill. I don't want to talk about this.
I'm sorry. This is why it's significant today. We always want to bring significance. It's significant today because, first of all, you don't know where your dams are.
I don't.
Second of all, your ass is living in a flood zone. And third of all, you don't know your EAP.
I don't.
And no one's giving it to you until the time of disaster. Now, I would argue that some regularly hit areas with natural disasters like hurricanes and things like that, they know their evacuation plans are planned out on like the streets. Like when we were in New England, it said evacuation plan this way. But if you don't know that you're living downstream from a dam and you don't know that you are subject to an evacuation plan, that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
Okay.
that's what I'm going to leave you with.
Okay.
You have homework. Look up where your dams are. Look if you're in a potential downstream of a dam, and then ask your local municipalities what your evacuation plan is and check and demand them to update those
Websites.
that listing of that dam just to make sure you're safe.
Okay. Good plan.
Titusville,
Thank you.
I'm looking at you.
Thank you for that PSA. Let's review our hits.
Yeah.
Why do you think you were picking up on like an oil baron?
Well, I think it's obvious that this was the creation of oil wealth and oil barons in the United States
Yeah, in the world.
and the world.
In the
yeah.
world.
Gas and lumber industries. Tell me.
Well, major resources in the area. Major resources in the area, not just oil, but also gas and lumber. Tell me about, I love this. I love that your image in your mind's eye of that documentary. Explain it again, because that's crazy.
Oh my God. Okay. So in my mind's eye, I had an image of a PBS documentary that I saw. Like, I want to say Ken Burns, but I'm not sure if it's really Ken Burns, but he is the genius behind every PBS documentary as far as I'm concerned. But there was a town living downstream from a recreational dam, and the dam burst in the middle of the night and the entire town was lost. And that was the
Johnstown?
flood-related disaster in Pennsylvania in 1889, the Johnstown flood.
Wow.
So
that was
that image
wow.
was what I saw in my head.
Wow, I'm getting goosebumps. When I knew about children dying, I think I was picking up on Jacob Bingenheimer and his family in particular.
It's the saddest. And as we talked about before, they kept moving around the town. I wonder if Jacob was thinking like, oh, if we didn't move there on Mechanic Street, if we stayed on Elm Street, you know?
What do you think about the fact that we were being pulled uphill and also north when we were driving around Emlenton?
Two things occur to me. one, as like channeling spirit, you would want to get uphill.
Yes.
You don't want to be.
Yes, as the flood was
Yes.
coming, as the waters, yes, everybody would want to get uphill, and it wouldn't have been easy.
No, it would have been a struggle.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know the easiest way uphill the way we didn't know the easiest way uphill as we were going through that town.
What about the sense that we needed to go north? What do you think was north?
Well, Titusville was definitely
Yes.
north. The dam was north of Titusville.
Yes, it all
Mhm.
originated north. I'm really surprised that I picked up on the explosions and
That is crazy.
explosions
talk.
related to gas because I mean that's why the river blew up. It was because those gaseous, the liquid chemicals and the oil, they created gases and got inflamed.
Do you think it's accurate to have that sense of pride for people that had been in these areas before?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
A lot of pride. A lot of people made their living here and worked here and created an industry here. What
An industry that fueled the country.
exactly? What about the name Crawford?
Oh my God. Well, Crawford was important because of the natural gas aspect, but also Crawford County is where Titusville is.
It's where our dam was, right?
It's Spartan. I'm not sure if Spartansburg is in Crawfordsville. I
Oh.
think it is. I'm not sure 100%.
But Titus,
not the point.
yeah, but
Titusville, definitely.
Titusville definitely, which is where Jacob lived.
Right. And what about the river trail seeming important and the feeling of flood? Again, cheap, but it's a hit.
Sure. But then that feeling in the cemetery of not being able to find people who died in the disaster and that confusion regarding the cemetery, I think that goes to that confusion regarding some of the members of the Bingenheimer family. And were they the Bingenheimers or were they the Wayland? You know what I mean? Like that whole situation, and then the grief surrounding the family and so many other families.
I just can't even imagine. Like, we think of disasters. It was Jacob's story that really highlighted for me the identification and the processing of healing, right? Like how to get these bodies to rest, how to maneuver the coffins throughout this devastated town. I mean, I didn't even think of that until I thought of Jacob's story.
Whatever happened to Jacob? Do we know?
We do know.
Tell me.
So, Jacob, 2 years after the disaster, he married again.
Oh.
He married Hattie, and she also lived through the Titusville disaster. The couple moved to rural New York State.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, fuck yeah, they
No,
did.
they didn't settle on a river either. Bet you anything.
They had no children. Jacob continued his career as a Boilermaker. Hattie was a homemaker. Sadly, Hattie passed away in 1916, and Jacob didn't pass.
He passed
Very
away
long
just
after.
14 months later.
And they were both buried in a rural cemetery in New York State.
I'm glad that he found love again.
Yeah.
It's still a heartbreaking situation.
I'm glad that he found love again with someone who was also had a real understanding of the devastation he went through. You know what I mean? Like they both lived through it, so they both probably had this
bonding over the grief of what they lost.
So in closing, I want to say, please, you guys, please check out the National Inventory of Dams. Just check it out. Put your zip code in, find out your nearest dam, and then cross-reference that information with the FEMA.gov website to find not only if you're downstream, but also what your emergency evacuation plans should look like and when you should be worried and thinking about this. Like if there's extreme weather or saturated soils and a lot of rain, that's when you look at it.
Okay. Tell the people where they can find us.
Please check out our website, commonmystics.net. Find us on all our socials at Common Mystics Pod.
Please listen in wherever you're listening to your favorite pods.
Please consider leaving us a positive review. We love reading them. You guys don't even know how much they mean to us.
And subscribe, download, like, and share.
Share, share, share. We're growing and we love seeing our numbers multiply. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. Good night.
Bye.
This has been a Common Mystics Media production. Editing done by Yokai Audio, Kalamazoo, Michigan.